I'm Rick Harp. This is your APTN News Brief for Monday, April 22nd. We begin in the Yukon, where a coroner's inquest into the deaths of 4 Indigenous women at the Whitehorse Emergency Shelter has concluded its second week. Here with her recap, Sarah Connors.
Much of the week's proceedings focused on the death of 52-year-old Darla Skookum, a citizen of the Little Salmon Carmacks First Nation. Skookum died at the Whitehorse Emergency Shelter last April after staff put her to bed on her stomach. In video footage leading up to Skookum's death, she appeared to be unconscious or sleeping and unable to stand or walk on her own. Staff were shown helping place Skookum in a wheelchair and moving her to an overflow sleeping room. They testified Skookum appeared intoxicated but breathing and responsive, and it's common practice at the shelter for intoxicated people to be put to bed on their stomach. The footage shows Skookum laying on her stomach with her face in her pillow. None of the staff who helped Skookum to bed went back to check on her. Around 12 hours later, a staff member discovered Skookum's lifeless body. Footage shows bodily fluids had leaked onto her pillow and mattress, a normal occurrence when someone dies. Skookum displayed no signs of life and was pronounced dead at the scene by medical personnel. One staff member who helped put Darla Skookum to bed said he didn't notice her face was in her pillow. He also said that after reviewing video footage, he now thinks placing her on her stomach was not the best position to leave her in. Other staff said that while Skookum's death did not lead to any new training, they're now required to perform bed checks 3 times a night to make sure clients are breathing. The inquest continues this week in Whitehorse. Sarah Connors, APTN National News, Whitehorse.
To Ottawa, where the Standing Committee on the Status of Women studies the implementation of a red dress alert system, a Canada-wide emergency system pushed for a year ago by NDP MP Leah Gazan to better and more quickly respond to cases of missing Indigenous women and girls. And that Standing Committee recently had an opportunity to ask questions of Gary Anandasangari, the Minister of Crown Indigenous Relations. Among those asking, Gazan, who wanted to know why this year's federal budget only set aside $1.3 million over 3 years for the alert.
$47 million to deal with the auto theft problem. And although I know that the auto theft problem is really tremendous in this country, the message is very clear that this country cares more about cars than it does Indigenous women, girls, 2S, LGBTQIA+. I'm wondering why there wasn't greater dollars put in, specifically in the areas of prevention, to deal with this. What has been acknowledged, in fact, by your government and your leader as an ongoing genocide.
The report of the of MMIWG Calls for Justice, the 231, are quite large, quite vast. And there is a preventative component and there is a supportive component. The preventative component goes to the core of the social determinants of health. So our investments on housing, our continued investment on housing, and I recognize that there are still gaps, I think is critical. I think the issues around emergency shelters, $27 million for emergency shelters and transitional homes on reserve, I think is a critical point here.
Turning to Bill C-29, the bill which, if passed, would create a national council to monitor progress on reconciliation, a council referenced by TRC Call to Action number 53. And on Friday, Senate amendments on the bill went up for debate in the House of Commons, a debate in which Conservative MP Jamie Schmale asked why, unlike the Assembly of First Nations, the Métis National Council, Inuit Tapiriit Kanatami, and the Native Women's Association of Canada, there was no seat on council under the current bill for the Congress of Aboriginal Peoples.
Specifically, the fact that the Congress of Aboriginal Peoples, despite representing a large number of Indigenous people living off reserve, when you're talking about those living off the First Nations, they represent status, non-status, Métis, and yet they are left off the founding table that then dictates the path going forward.
A vote on C-29 is expected later this month. If passed, it will then go on to Governor General Mary Simon for royal assent. And finally, a return to our coverage of a controversial silica sand mine in Manitoba. And in an earlier story, we heard from members of Hollow Water First Nation against the recently approved project. Sav Jonesa now on what its proponents have to say.
An approved silica sand mine in Hollow Water First Nations traditional territory is still receiving pushback. The Alberta-based company Canadian Premium Sand, or CPS, is the proponent of the project. Silica sand is sand with a high silicon dioxide content and is often used in glassmaking. The silica sand mined by the project was originally going to be sold to the oil and gas industry for fracking. The sand is now intended to make solar glass panels in a manufacturing plant CPS has been approved to construct in Selkirk, Manitoba. CPS CEO and President Glenn LaRue says both projects are linked and construction at both sites will begin once financing is in place. CPS has had at least one local community consultation back in 2019. Around 130 people attended. That year, CPS received around 180 pages of public comments, mostly in objection to the mine, along with concerns. They came from local cottagers, residents of surrounding communities, and environmental groups. Their concerns focused on noise levels, traffic and road conditions, water quality, and many worried about the environment as well as their own health. In 2022, CPS held a community information session unveiling the new project purpose of making solar glass panels. Only 35 people attended, and 8 provided feedback on their environmental concerns. The majority of people were concerned still with noise and air pollution, and then water quality, animals, and fish habitat. Trucks carrying the sand will leave the facility an average of 50 times a day, 5 to 7 days a week, based on CPS estimates. But Hollow Water First Nation leadership reaffirmed their full support for the project. In a letter to CPS, their chief and council stated, in part, "We're proud to support this long-term vision for our community, for Manitoba, and for Canada. We see a future where we all benefit." APTN reached out to Chief Larry Barker through email, phone, and in person, but was not able to reach him for an interview. CPS CEO Glenn LaRue was unavailable for an interview with APTN National News. He sent an emailed statement. He said he's aware of some community members' concerns, but that he's also aware of concerns by leaders in the communities related to very high unemployment, related social challenges, and overdependence on levels of government funding to maintain their community infrastructure and programs. The local leadership wants responsible economic development and employment opportunities in their communities as a platform to build a better future, and our project can help provide that. According to CPS, there will be up to 17 jobs available for operating the plant and up to 20 jobs as truck drivers delivering the sand to Selkirk. The mine is slated to operate for 35 years. It and the manufacturing plant combined are estimated to generate $200 million in provincial taxes over a 10-year period. Sav Jonesa, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
And that's your APTN News Brief for Monday, April 22nd. I'm Rick Harp.